Good morning and a very happy new year to everyone on the webinar. And welcome to our very first installment of TP Talks for 2018. We thought we'd kick off the year discussing two major trends for 2018, how to curate an economical customer experience, today's topic, and another webinar tomorrow on best practices around data security and privacy in a contact center. I am your host, Amit Shankadas, Executive Vice President, Global Market Engagement at Teleperformance, and I'm excited to be joined by two industry stalwarts, Katrina Menzigian from Everest and Melissa O'Brien from HFS Research. We will be talking about best practices and how to deliver an economical customer experience. But before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. You will notice several widgets on your screen. You can access resources, notice this to the right of your screen, or you can interact with us through the question and answer widget towards the bottom. If you have questions, we'd love for you to submit them. We will address them either through the conversation or towards the end. This is meant to be interactive, so the more questions you ask, the better. Our objective is to make this webinar as useful as we can for you. Should you have any technical issues, please click on the Help widget. See that towards the bottom. And like I said, questions, submit. You can also click on that little email-looking thing to send us an email. So what is TP Talks? First and foremost, TP Talks was created by Teleperformance to help you as curators of the customer experience at your companies, to help you learn from best practices, big trends, innovations, and real-world success stories from people like yourselves. Our goal is simply to provide you a platform for learning and collaboration. Today's TP Talks is one of several that are available to you, and I'll share how you can get access to the platform of TP Talks in a bit. A little bit about Teleperformance, your host for today's webinar. Teleperformance has been serving industry-leading brands for almost 4 decades, with a focus on supporting our clients in 160 markets around the world. In fact, we interact with more than 40% of the world's population annually. We support our clients across multiple verticals and channels with services including back office, customer care, technical support, customer acquisition, digital solutions, chats, bots, social, etc., and other specialized services. We are particularly proud of the fact that we're recognized by many industry analysts, such as those that are on today's call, but also by several clients in helping them curate an economical customer experience. As I alluded to earlier, this experience of ours comes from the vast number of years, clients, brands that we represent across the globe. It is with this experience and this context that we have set up today's webinar, which is about curating an economical customer experience. And what do we mean by an economical customer experience? Companies like yourselves face a constant challenge to facilitate a journey that shapes a positive view of a company in the customer's mind, while managing the myriad of digital channels of interaction available today. An even greater challenge is wrangling all of these elements in a way that makes sense economically. It's not uncommon for some companies to make investments in digital technology, sometimes to the detriment of customer experience. On the one hand, there's a need for digital labor. But in a world where customers expect more, it is essential to strike an economical balance in customer experience in terms of holistically addressing the issues of human connection in a digital world. This combination of understanding how to deliver better agent experience, optimizing business processes to deliver customer experience is what we mean by curating an economical customer experience. In fact, we've written a book about it. I'll share details of the book with you in a bit. To have this conversation with us, I'm really honored to have two industry stalwarts, Katrina Menzigian, Vice President Research at Everest Group. She leads the firm's research practice on customer experience management services and contact center outsourcing, finance and accounting outsourcing, and procurement outsourcing services. Katrina brings over 20 years of experience in conducting market research, developing competitive intelligence, and advising service providers and buyers on a wide range of outsourcing, offshoring, and BPS issues. Melissa O'Brien is Research Director, Contact Center at HFS Research. Her research coverage includes customer experience management services, exploring ties with marketing operations, and developing thought leadership around intelligent automation for the front office. In addition, she also focuses on customer-centric strategies, intelligent operations, and service delivery within the retail and travel hospitality verticals in particular. Prior to HFS, Melissa spent 4.5 years at IDC. With that, let's pull Melissa and Katrina into the conversation. And Melissa, you heard me talk a little bit about how we at Teleperformance look at what an economical customer experience is. From your perspective, how would you define or how would you look at an economical customer experience?
Yeah, thanks, Amit. I'm excited to be on the call, on the webinar with everyone today. So thank you for inviting us. I think this is an interesting concept that you've introduced here around economical CX, and I like how you talked about kind of creating that right balance of meeting customer expectations and quality and so forth with also maintaining sort of a cost savings element and keeping those costs under control. When we survey our enterprise decision makers and talk about this quite a bit, we did a study last year where we asked about, what are the top things that you're looking to try to do with your customer experience or your customer engagement strategy, and costs always come out on the top of that. Everybody's trying to reduce cost, and I think that's a big piece of it, of course. But on the other hand, on the other element of it, there are these enterprise decision makers are also looking to really infuse more digital technology into their customer engagement strategy. They're looking to improve engagement and customer satisfaction, and doing that at a reasonable cost. So I think when you talk about economical CX, in terms of defining it, probably looks different for every organization depending on what their goals are and where they're at in that journey. But I think it's that striving for that win-win, which creates a happy customer and does it, in a cost-effective way. And a lot of times these things really are kind of inherently economical. If a customer wants to self-serve, and perhaps that's a less costly way to service that customer than having a long phone conversation or what have you. A lot of times that works out for a win-win. So there's a lot that goes in, I'm sure, to the design of that and, into the different things that can impact it. But I think that's what we're going to be talking about today.
You're exactly right, Melissa. We will talk about a couple of ways to achieve that. Katrina, from your perspective, is it possible to achieve an economical customer experience, get the best of both worlds, the win-win?
Well, I think Melissa, first of all, hello, Amit, and to our audience, and thank you very much for including me in the conversation and Everest Group in the conversation today. So I think Melissa sort of took us down a very productive path. One other way to think about this is that, how do we define something that's economical? And it's really based on a concept of value. And I think one of the first things that organizations need to step back and do is to define the value that they're trying to achieve with any investment that they make about their customer experience space. And, every organization is going to define that value differently. In some cases, a primary interest is cost management. In other cases, it's to create differentiation in the marketplace. And then another scenario might be that you're fundamentally changing your business model and have to think about how does customer experience support that strategic shift. So I think one of the first things that has to happen is, figure out what is the value that you're trying to gain. And then what's great about today's environment is that with this advancement in technology and change in consumer engagement models, we're at a unique place where you can fundamentally redesign what you think customer experience is really about, and to do that over time. So the technology allows us to do things now that we have not been able to do previously. So it creates a new environment, to bring in really creative thinking about how to manage customer experience. But then once you've got an idea of that, you need to look at the investment and the expense, not of individual components of the implementation or the change in strategy, but from a total cost of ownership standpoint, a TCO standpoint, because it is a journey and it is a multi-year investment. So you've got to think about the value you're trying to achieve and then look at your TCO with that lens, and not look at the individual components, but look at how is this impacting my business from a very broader perspective, and what is the actual cost to my organization to go down this path. So in my mind, that's one level of the thinking around achieving that economic view of customer experience.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Katrina, because you're right. Economical doesn't just mean cost savings. It's the flip side of it's the investment piece, it's the TCO piece, it's the piece of what does the extra lift you get from either digital channels of interaction or human-assisted service, etc. And I thought it might be interesting to look at a little bit of research we have from our customer experience lab. We call it the CX lab. We surveyed about 130,000 consumers in 11 countries across 15 verticals. And as you can see from some of the numbers here, the proliferation of mobile devices, social media has changed the way how we communicate, interact, engage with consumers, or actually I should say how consumers engage with us. Voice is clearly the most used and preferred channel of interaction, but we see about 73% of consumers prefer digital channels of interaction, right? Whether it's chat, bots, AI, etc. And to your point earlier, both of you kind of made the point about, Melissa, about self-service. There might be a place for self-service if that's what a consumer wants. And Katrina, your point about, how do you balance out the human element, which might be the more costly element, with the digital element or technology to improve the service offering. So Katrina, maybe we'll start with you this time. From your perspective, how do you find that right balance? Where is that right balance? And I understand TCO is kind of your view to look at the economics. So where's that balancing act between human and technology?
Well, technology, in my mind, is meant to serve the objectives of the organization as opposed to driving the behavior of the organization. So one thing that I've been sharing with my audiences is that, in essence, today we are trying to recreate in a primarily remote, digitized environment many of the customer experience values that have existed for hundreds and thousands of years. Concepts around consistency of service, intimacy of service, predictability and reliability of service. And all of these things we used to experience in a face-to-face realm. And today, we hardly engage. Most of our work as consumers, our interaction as consumers, is through some kind of a remote channel. And what we're trying to recreate, though, is that experience in that remote environment. So in order to get at what that means for your organization, is I think you need to have a very careful upfront mapping of the work that you do with customers, the touch points that you have with customers, what experience you want them to have, and what options you have for achieving that, whether it's a combination of human and technology, whether it's technology only or human only. So it requires going back and really doing a thorough internal assessment of what it is that you're trying to create as an experience for your customers at each step of the different kinds of interactions that you have with them. And I think that's what informs that balance. And it means you really thoroughly have to understand your own business in order to be able to do that. So that's how I would begin a conversation around getting at that balance for any business.
And Katrina, to your point about understanding every step of where the customer is interacting, Melissa, I want to pull you in into this conversation around point of where those steps happen, because so much of this we talk about is customer facing, the front office, but there's also things that are happening in the back office or outside of the direct customer interaction where this technology human interaction plays in. And I know you talk a lot about this concept of one office. What's your take on the technology human balance, not just for the front office perspective, but also the back office?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point. I mean, a lot of times, in particular, being in the customer experience space, we get all excited about all the digital technologies, and we can interact with our customers on social, and we have to make sure that they have a great mobile experience and so forth. And all those things are really important. But this is such a bigger picture sort of issue slash challenge slash opportunity when we talk about technology and improving business operations, because there's so much sort of behind the scenes and underlying. And when we talk about the one office concept, which is an HFS framework that we've created, it's about ultimately supporting that digital customer experience. So that's what we want. We're trying to become more customer centric, employee centric, creating those experiences that are ultimately going to grow our businesses. But also there's so much underneath that, and it's about when we talk about one office, it's about breaking down those barriers, because so often creating that great front office experience and having a good customer interaction is supported by something that is going on in the billing department or is going on, even in underlying IT systems. So it's kind of an end game that we talk about, maybe more aspirational, of this concept of one office, but it's breaking down those silos and actually having the capability to, to support those things from all the way from the front to the back office through sort of every element of an organization. And so it's kind of a big picture and a lofty goal, but and there are a lot of angles to it. As you know, we've talked through some of those before. It's kind of a big picture thing, but that's the way that we're looking at it and saying, we want to make sure and try to align the entire organization to creating that customer experience. And I'm not sure if I quite hit on the original question around the balance of human support with technology in the front office, but we're seeing a lot of great examples of that too, how front office employees are using technology. They're leveraging that in order to empower better experiences. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, our take on it.
Yeah, and I think, Melissa, if I kind of summarize what you folks are saying, it's technology, the enabler to help the human, whether it's the human agent or whether it's the human customer, both ways, and looking at it beyond just the front office transaction, but the journey of the transaction that might involve back office elements where things like RPA also kick in. Jumping to kind of the next piece around how one can curate an economical customer experience, and if we think of ourselves as curators, then we are guides. We are experts in our products and services. We have insights into our business and customers, and many times one way of facilitating an economical customer experience is leveraging a partner that can bring together the interaction channels, the infrastructure solutions, partnerships, networks, process methodologies. Some of these partners, whether they're technology partners or service providers or otherwise, they can offer flexibility and scalability to an organization. So with that, Melissa, would love to get your perspective on how do you think companies can leverage partners, service providers, or technology providers, either ways, as curators to help create this economical customer experience?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think that the old paradigm of using a third party, in particular around contact center or customer engagement, was about passing off this work to do it cheaply, to be frank, and then it's shifted toward passing off and doing it better. What process improvements can be created. Now I think there's an opportunity for a much different paradigm, and we're starting to see examples of this, not just doing the work better, but also helping to define some of the objectives and to design and transform what that customer experience looks like. And when we've done our surveys, we've asked about enterprise buyers' sort of expectations, and they're increasingly for the future looking for less tactical, kind of passing off work type of relationships, and more strategic. And I think that's a huge opportunity in particular for using customer engagement service providers, because if they're taking your phone calls or doing your chats, or they're the face of your company. They're the ones that really focus on getting that customer engagement stuff right. And when you look at the challenges that enterprises are having right now, a lot of it is around having the right data, knowing their customers. And nobody has more of this information than some of these service providers. So I think that's why they're really looking to some of these partners to really kind of say, all right, you guys are the experts in this. How can we transform? What are you learning from the data that you have? And what do we need to do? And looking for some of that thought leadership and design piece as well. But going along with that, the relationship has to be one that has a lot of cultural affinity, a lot of trust. And we talk with buyers all the time, and you can talk about capabilities and technology and all of that, all day long. What it boils down to ultimately is sort of that relationship, and they always come back and say, I really felt like they got our business, like we could trust them. So I think all those things kind of have to blend in, have to all come together in order to have a more successful relationship that is really kind of curating a better experience as well as being economical, as we're talking about. But I know Katrina and I have talked about this quite a bit together in the past. I know you have some thoughts on it, Katrina. I'll pass off to you.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. You brought up some really good points, and I think service providers are well positioned to be thought partners for their clients. I think the other piece of this equation is that both the service providers and their enterprise clients have to be prepared to engage in a different way than they have before, so that the kind of the business relationship goes beyond sort of a procurement directed kind of commercial relationship with each other, to one where there's a lot of sort of mutual investment in trying to, so to get at the things you were describing, Melissa. I think the nature of the partnership has to change. It has to change from a commercial standpoint, and it has to change from a relationship standpoint, right? So that you're not just having an outsourcing contract managed. You're having a ongoing relationship itself being curated, so that you have not only procurement and maybe contact center people involved with the relationship, but your marketing folks are involved, your leadership is involved. On the service provider side, you've got to be able to bring consultants and design people to the conversation if that's what your client's asking about. So there's many elements of the relationship, I think, that we are seeing beginning to evolve, but to get to that full potential of what exists there, I think we still have a little bit of ways to go. But again, we're seeing this conversation growing in the marketplace. So I think it involves a few different things.
And one of the other ways that one can kind of balance that, the economics, is global sourcing, right? Whether you're looking at home agents or whether you're looking at offshore or onshore resources. So there's the technology piece we talked about. There's leveraging partnerships, leveraging expertise, scale, economies, efficiencies that you both mentioned. And then there's looking at geos, and and you've got to look at factors, whether it's proximity to the customer, time zone, stability of infrastructure, etc. And I know we can spend a whole session talking about this. So very quickly, from your perspective, Katrina, what are some of the considerations in selecting the right location?
Yeah, this is a super interesting topic, and one of our first studies this year at Everest Group is actually looking at the talent model and the evolution of talent models, and then that, of course, feeds into decisions like shoring options. We're increasingly thinking about this topic of shoring options under this big umbrella that you could describe as omni-shoring. And by omni-shoring, we're really not looking at people and as individual units. We're looking at the work that happens to support customer experience. And then thinking about what's the best way to get that work done? And does it involve humans or does it involve technology? And where would those humans be? Would they be the most appropriate people for a given set of talent and skills be onshore? Or would they be potentially in other geographies? And which geographies have the skill sets that you're looking for? And by the way, as we've said, those skill sets are changing. So if you've got folks in different locations around the world today, they might not be the right people in the right places as you look at your skills requirements going forward. So how does that mix change for you? And then I guess the other question is, we've certainly seen new locations coming into the mix. What do those offer? So it's the idea of looking at work and looking at where the work can get done most effectively and what the model is around that work. So that's how we're kind of breaking down that question of how should I be thinking about my shoring options. Melissa, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Great points. We have to recognize that the location piece is never going to be a magic bullet. It's always going to be, kind of a big picture sort of exercise in understanding what work needs to be done and where, and kind of pulling those different levers. And some of them may be, offshore, nearshore. Some of them may be automation. And we also did a study last year where we asked these enterprise decision makers about how important that geographic location was to service delivery, and we asked about it in the context of one office. And as we actually recognized that some of these sort of talent needs and hiring profiles are changing, and the majority said that geographic location is really important, but sourcing the skills regardless of location is more important. 58% responded with that. And I think that's really telling to a lot of the changes that are happening within within the talent models and some of the change management that needs to happen in order to support and have different types of talent. So so I agree with you completely, Katrina, and this is something we're looking at very closely, in particular as it relates to going back to what we talked about, that right balance of human talent and technology. So it's really about rethinking the whole talent situation and needs and how some of those delivery locations fit into that.
Melissa, you summarized that really well. It's the balance between, I think the takeaway is the balance between the human technology piece, the balance of the agent talent, wherever that is, whether it's a human agent or, as Melissa, as you call it, a cognitive agent. Katrina, I hadn't quite heard omni-shoring before, but I think we have a new term now between omni-channel and omni-shoring. That's, but your point is spot on. It's, if you look at it as a channel or a platform for interaction, it's spot on. We have time for maybe a couple of questions, and for those questions we don't get to, we will respond to them on a one-on-one basis. The question, like I said, we have a couple of minutes here, but the question is, for organizations focused on avoiding and deflecting incidents, how should they be thinking about curating this experience between the technology piece, the partner, and probably more the technology piece? That is, I think, call deflection and call avoidance is one of the big subjects that everybody grapples with. And Katrina, maybe we'll start with you real quick and then hop across to Melissa.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of a funny term to think about interaction with our customers as something we want to avoid or deflect. So it comes from a mentality that's part of a legacy that came from calls and the expense associated with calls, voice calls specifically. So if we shift that paradigm and think of what are the ways we can support that customer so that they're satisfied, that's where the new technology becomes very useful. Part of it is giving the customers the option and the ability to determine how they would like that question answered. So this is where better use of technology comes in and giving them multiple options for getting their questions answered. But also, I think, sort of going back to root cause analysis of why are these calls coming in the first place. So, one way to think about avoiding a call is that the need for the call never exists. and that might actually be something happening elsewhere in the organization. Maybe happening because you've got a billing issue, or you've actually got an accounts receivable or payables issue, and you need to think about how that call originated in some back office area. So that whole equation around CX is really expanding in that regard, in my mind.
Yeah, Katrina, I'll jump in on that.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I was just going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, when you made the comment about, well, if the issue didn't exist in the first place because you have some smoother operations behind the scenes. I mean, I think that's really what we're talking about, in terms of breaking down those silos, and really looking at how other elements, not in the front office, are impacting the ability to handle some of these customer inquiries, and can they actually be avoided? And it makes me think too just about different business models, because if you think about Uber, you don't have to call Uber. It's just inherently set up so that you kind of are able to to get your ride, or there's a lot of other examples of those kind of different business models that are just kind of inherently digital and set up so that you don't need to have that type of interaction. So I thought that was spot on.
And I appreciate your insights there. I know we've gone through this information fairly quickly. It's been a quick 30 minutes. I have pushed to everybody's browser a tab with a link to our Curating an Economical Customer Experience ebook, where you can get more detail, more insight. Melissa and Katrina have provided insight and commentary in the ebook. You can dive a little deeper. I'm also going to push to you another tab on your browser where you can get access to other TP Talks, the platform of available TP Talks. When you put it all together, hopefully it'll help guide you as curators of your customer experience. Melissa and Katrina, thank you very much for your participation on today's webinar. It's been very insightful, very interesting. As I mentioned to everybody, the on-demand version of this will be available. So there were a couple of you that asked to see particular slides. You can get back to watching this webinar and those particular slides of commentary from Melissa and Katrina. Once again, Melissa, Katrina, thank you for your participation. For everybody else, download the ebook, download the other resources, bookmark the 2 tabs I sent you. Thank you very much, and we shall see you again on another TP Talks soon. Take care, everybody.